So Commissioner called the meeting to order at 16:05.
Second.
Do we need to approve the minutes from last meeting, or do you guys want to do that at the regular?
No, it's not on the agenda. There's no minutes on the agenda. It's a special meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is continuation of discussions for potential levy and or bond issue coming up in November to overcome the financial deficits and to help the district be more economically sustained for the future years. The last levy that we've had was in 2010. We're on our 13th year of that levy at this point. And with the capital facilities plan online, I haven't gotten any questions from anybody from the public. I'm assuming people in the public have read that capital facilities plan. It's in the news flash area of our website at wcfd5.com. And anybody that has any questions are more than welcome to contact me at any time. I'd love to have some coffee with you, go over that capital facilities plan if you have questions or answer any specific items that you have questions on. So this commission is challenged with choosing whether we're going to go for a levy, a bond, or a combination of the two. At this point, Brian Snur is out of the country until the 31st. He will not be joining us. So the next meetings he might be able to join would be the 6th or the 12th of June. And if a decision is going to be made, he has to bring the documentation forwards to be signed and to be submitted to the county, and a resolution and everything else that has to be done. So that's after we choose either a bond or a levy or a combination of the two at this point. But there is a lot of paperwork that has to be filed with the county. And I believe we have until August to do that. And that's it. So right now we're looking at a levy bond or levy combination bond measure, potentially for the November ballot, again, to sustain the future of this district and the emergency services and non-emergency services we provide to the community of Point Roberts. So where would you guys like me to start? Would you like me to, what would you like me to review?
Well, we didn't spend much time on the levy last time.
Okay.
Could we maybe look at that a little bit more?
Sure. So Commissioner Lester would like me to spend a little time on the levy issue and what a potential levy could look like for taxpayers in the district. So in 2010, we went for a permanent levy, if my recollection is correct, and that has sustained us up to this point. We have a couple years ahead of us until we start going operational above the revenue that we're going to be bringing in to the district. And we obviously have around 4.2 million of capital facilities needs. That includes building issues, parking lot issues, and apparatus. And then we're also looking at the need to hire part-time people in the future to overcome what will become a deficit in responders once our older responders, which are 77, 74, and I believe in the late 60s, will be retiring out. So I'm assuming that'll be around a $30,000 cost per person, but there are some regulatory things that I'm getting from fire chiefs that already have part-time paid personnel and the rules, and then reaching out to our legal counsel on that as well, and making sure that we're dialed in on what it would take, what would be the responsibilities of the district if we did hire part-time paid people, how much they could work, would they be required to be paid benefits, and how many hours, obviously, of work they could do a month and also a week. And we'll have to dive into that at some point after we decide if we're going for a levy, bond, or a combination of the two. Again, I'll review for the public that may have attended at this point that a levy is what we're currently operating under. That was a 40-cent levy back in 2010. And it took us up to, I believe, around 84 cents, 85 cents, somewhere in there in 2010. And we've been doing well on that up to realistically the pandemic and the inflation and everything else that has hit us. And I believe that'll be with us for considerable years ahead of us. The cost of doing business for emergency services has skyrocketed. Our apparatus has on average gone up per year around 8%. This year, talking to a apparatus builder down at they said that their cost has gone up to a high of around 16% for apparatus. Building, also we're about 2.5 years out if we would have an apparatus custom built for this agency, which our 1991 apparatus was. So we have an apparatus that is currently 32 years old. We have another fire truck that is 29 years old. We have an ambulance that is 32 years old. Our newest ambulance is a 2007. Our newest engine is a 2018 mini pumper. And there's a lot of things that deal with WSRB, with the rating capacity, how much water we carry, those types of things. So equaling the capacity or the apparatus that we currently have would be the goal to maintain a WSRB rating of 5, which we currently have for insurance for businesses and homeowners. So at this point, for the sustainability of this district, for the financial prudency of this district as well, it's come to our attention having an updated capital facilities plan that we have to find a way to help fund the extension of the capital facilities needs, also the future of this district. So when it comes to a levy, I'll bring up the levy cost sheet. If that's going to be, just give me 1 second, please. Everybody should be able to see this at this point. Commissioner Katz, can you see this?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Thank you. Patty, are you able to see this?
Yes, I can see it, Chief. Thank you.
Okay, so again, these are approximations off our current valuation and our current mill rate of 0.693. That goes out into a calculation, just to let you know. The first line rounded up, the Excel spreadsheet just rounded up to the 3458. The ones below it take out the entire calculation on that. So it's 3457 and change. I think it's 5074 are the last 4 digits of that number. And you can see starting at the current, so a $500,000 home, currently they pay approximately $346.73. Again, these are approximations. These are not county numbers. The county will have the final say on what the numbers are, but these are as close as we can get to the calculations at this point. So a 20-cent levy would increase that by $100, a 40-cent levy, $200, and a 50-cent levy for a $500,000 home would increase $250 per year for their property tax. And again, you can just follow that down to a $750,000 home and $1 million home. Now down at the bottom, to explain what's down at the bottom, again, is the valuation of this community. I believe that was done in 21 or 22. I'm going to say it was done in 22. 935 million is where the valuation, it almost increased by 200 million from the previous. I think it was 740 million.
Recording in progress.
Linda, can you mute yourself? Or hang up? Yeah. Thank you.
I had to hang up and I tried twice. I got it now, thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. So 935 million is the current valuation. If you take that by our current mill or levy of 693, it gives us an operational or revenue, I should say, of 648,449 and change. If we were to take a 20-cent levy, you can see that it would bring our revenue up to 835,000, an increase of 187,000 to our revenue, and so forth. So all the way down to a 50-cent levy, which would bring our revenue up to 1.1 million and bring us in an additional 467,000 approximate. Again, all these numbers are approximate. So please don't call me and dive in and saying, well, this is off by $1,000 or this is off by $100, because again, these are approximate. But I took the guidance of the county, and people can do their own math as well and come up with some numbers too. So these are what someone with those values of homes, I can go up to 1.5 million and 2 million, because we do have some homes here that are in the price range. We have a home on Marine Drive that's 4.8 or 4.9 million. And I could also bring those in. I just thought these were realistic home values within our community. Anybody having a value of less than $500,000 would be paying less than any of those numbers. So that's something that people could calculate out, but I can go down to a $300,000 home if people would like me to do that, and up to a $2 million home if you would like me to do that. So that's your choice if the commissioners would like me to spread this sheet out. So the issue again with having a bond and only going for a bond would have to probably be in the range of a $4 million bond. And bond rates just went up again because the Fed a month or so ago raised it another 0.25%. And so that's going to affect it as well. It's a 20-year bond, so the taxpayers will pay that out over 20 years. But a bond allows us to have immediate visual feedback to the public. The public can see us buying new apparatus, starting the work on the parking lot, the roof, everything else that's within our capital facilities plan starts working on those things immediately. That's all well and good until we look back at our current levy, which would not be able to sustain any issues with any of those capital facility improvements outside of warranty problems. So that becomes an issue. We can become basically almost upside down financially at that point. If we go out for a bond and a levy on the same ballot, and let's say the bond passes at 4 million and the levy doesn't, we're in the same situation. We're financially upside down. We're in a very tight place of not being able to support any improvements that we do with those bonds, with that bond money. I believe we have 3 years to spend the bond money as well after we would obtain it. If we go out for a levy, it would be a permanent levy most likely. So we would have the sustainability of that extra income year to year. Obviously, our capital facility improvements would have to be pushed out on a yearly basis. And we'd have to do the most crucial ones first and then move into the less crucial ones. I would say purchasing an engine or an ambulance would be one of the most critical factors to get a younger engine into our emergency response. I necessarily, the conversation would have to go whether we would be going out for a used one or a new one, but I can tell you that I don't want to absorb someone else's problems. It's rare that you can find a good used one on the market that doesn't have some major issues to it. And that would become an issue. We bought the 1991 engine that we currently have that was custom built for this community out of a bond. I've been told I was not part of that, but out of a bond, and the bingo helped supply some funds to purchase that engine. That engine has lasted us 32 years because it was a custom built truck, not a commercial chassis, different chassis, and other things that are stronger than something that's just off the line. So the goal would be able to be purchasing a truck that would last us just as long. another 30 years for this community. So in 15 years, we wouldn't have to be looking at either retrofitting that truck or refurbishing the brand new truck and maybe purchasing a new truck to replace a truck that falls apart in 15 years, because there are manufacturers out there that trucks will not last that very long. So I wouldn't plan on purchasing one of those vehicles. Same thing would go for an ambulance, replacing our 1991, bringing a new ambulance into our front line and putting our 2007, which is now 16 years old, into a reserve capacity for a second ambulance again, just like we have now. So for the public, we have 3 engines, we have 2 ambulances, we have 2 staff vehicles, we have 1 brush truck, we have a utility, which is a air cascade hazmat, we have an ATV as well for trail rescues. And I believe that sums up what we have in our fleet. All of that can be found in the capital facilities plan that's posted online for the public. So these are the levy rates. This would be consistent. Again, the Washington State had in front of it earlier this month or last month a bill that could have provided us a little flexibility in how much we could take on a yearly basis. Right now, we're locked into only being able to take 1% increase to our revenue every year. That is state law. And that potential law that was going to be passed could have moved that up to 3%. So that did not pass, that got tabled, or it was voted down. And that is not going to be in place to try to help offset some of our financial difficulties. So we're still only going to be required or allowed to take the 1% on a yearly basis at this point. To give you an idea, 1% is around $6,000 for this district. That doesn't even really realistically, it's stretching outfitting a firefighter in full gear, and that's 1 firefighter. So a levy would have to be strong enough in order for us to overcome our capital facilities needs within the next 5, 7, 10 years. To be able to accomplish all of our capital facility needs within that period of time, plus potentially absorb 1 or 2 part-time paid people to staff this community during the week. Again, the time that we're at our lowest number of responders is obviously Monday through Friday day, and that's because our volunteers work, and some of them go off point to do their jobs. Others can't come in because they're working in Canada, and so forth. That once we lose our three of our main responders, there's another individual too, but he's not an EMT or a firefighter. We'll be down to 1 or 2 responders potentially during the week. And you can't run a fire with 2 responders. You can't run effectively. You can't, sure, I can pull a hose and I can squirt water on a house, but if there's a rescue, more people are needed to effect that rescue. You have very much difficulty running an EMS call with 2 people. If we end up transporting off point, then the point is left unprotected for fire and emergency services until that crew gets back to the point. We've only had 1 incident in my time here since 2012 that both Chief Shields and I had to transport a patient, and we transported to a rendezvous on Highway 99, which is about 20 minutes away. And we were able to get back into the community before a second call dropped. But the last thing we want to have, and how we think and how we deploy our personnel, is trying to leave the most certified, most skill set, the highest skill set here on Point Roberts at all times, and affording what is necessary for transports, for emergency services transports, or other business administrative duties off point.
You made the term that, or said that the levy would be probably sustainable. Is there something other than that?
No, I mean, the permanent levy would be sustained, right? And until inflation or the cost of doing business as it has hit us now outpaces our revenue coming in, because our revenue is only increasing by approximately 1.7% a year. That 1% is, from the 1% that we're legally able to take. And the other 0.7% comes from hospital district rent and, other things as well. So the cost of capital facilities, and I think we're being conservative. I believe the number is actually low. We're assuming in the capital facilities plan for our capital facility cost to go up 4.5% a year. For those apparatus, for station work, those types of things. And I believe that's conservative. But going with this with the county and our financial manager, Patty Markell, we believe 4.5% is a starting place. And then as we've discussed earlier, when our 2018 plan went into effect, that we would revisit the capital facilities plan every few years and make sure that we're keeping up with the costs and everything else in regards to that. We're looking at an increase of 4% for operational costs when our revenue is only going up by 1.7%. So understand gloves, flashlights, balaclavas, all of those have to meet National Fire Protection Association standards. I can't just go down to Walmart and buy clothing for our firefighters. These have to meet specific industry standards for testing, for heat, bunch of different things. So, and that includes our boots and all that. Right now, I can't afford to even outfit all of our volunteers with the proper gear for their station wear. They're spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars of their own money when they come here to volunteer. Most of them are not being paid anything. We do have some volunteers that now are getting stipends paid out to them. One stipend I'll give you is they get paid $15 to go on a fire call. So residential structure fire, they get $15 to risk their lives. If they have to afford a rescue inside that house, they're getting paid $15 to do that.
Is that? No, just the thing that cost capital facilities may go higher as time goes on, as that resource dwindles, the cost bidders are jacking it up.
Sure, and
We can't control that.
no, we can't control that. The manufacturers are having hard time getting people to work, just like anywhere else. The supply chain is still affecting, all of the suppliers for ambulances and getting products, getting materials. All of those things are making things go up, right, in cost, and faster than what we're used to, obviously. And that's why we're sitting here today and having these meetings in order to hopefully come up with a solution to protect this organization so we can continue doing our jobs for this community.
$1 million job be done. Contractors, normally, especially the ones you want to get, are not here and are not available. And so it might cost $1.2 million or something. It's kind of hard to plan for. We haven't. Yes, sir. Reserves and stuff.
Sure.
A year or two of that kind of.
Well, right now, our reserves are 1.1 million. And that includes everything that we have in the bank in all of our different accounts. Is that correct, Patty? My memory serves me correct.
I believe so. Let me pull up last month's real quick. Yes, 1,179,000.
Okay. And that's in all of our, can you overview those funds or those places of investments that we have that money?
Yes, that includes, this is as of April 30th. We have a small amount of, roughly, we usually keep around $2,500 in a key bank account, and that's payroll is passed through that account. And we have in the expense investment account, roughly $645,000. And then we also have a capital investment account, which has $231,968, and a reserve investment account of $284,500. And also the donations investment account has $14,276 in it.
Thank
It's
you very
just all of those funds are held at the county. They just have different names. They are investment accounts. They are earning interest. It's just a way of segregating the money into
Sure.
different pots for different reasons.
Sure, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Norm, you have questions? You had some questions last time. You wanna?
No,
Chief, there is a participant comment question in the chat.
That's gonna take me a little bit to read. So, give me a second.
Basically, it's the question that you brought up at the last meeting. How about we take a levy suggestion at this time and hold off on a bond for the future? So maybe you could review what that would entail for this participant.
I appreciate the question from Mark. So the goal would be to potentially take, and again, this is a discussion with the commissioners, but if we took a levy, that levy could sustain us. Again, our capital facility needs would have to be pushed off as we are saving money on a yearly basis. And as we accrue enough funds, then we would obviously have a solution for our capital facility item. Does that make sense? We would satisfy that item, get it accomplished, and move on to the next item. That would hopefully not necessitate a bond, right, in the future if we took a larger levy to overcome the capital facilities we need to have done in the next 5, 7, 10 years. So if that wasn't possible, then the goal is to take a levy, reduce as much of the capital facility cost as we could through that levy, and take a smaller bond in the years to come. So instead of a $4 million bond, take a $2 million, $1.5 million, or $1 million bond that would be paid out over 20 years of the public to finish any capital facility necessities that were in the plan. So that is also an idea.
But that one would be taken out at the same time or?
No, this would be a bond, if a bond was necessary at all. It would be years down the road. So, but that would depend upon the levy that we would take. Again, a larger levy could overcome having to do a bond issue. No one knows how much things are going to cost or where we're going to be at in 10 years. We don't have that, scope that's we can see and where our personnel needs are going to be, because that is part of a levy. Personnel staffing is levy. That's not done by a bond. So bond is facilities and apparatus and stuff. Very specific. But if we need to start adding part-time paid people beyond 1, 2, 3 people, we need to add 4 or 5. That has to be supported by a levy. So that money comes out of the levy then to support those personnel. And refurbishing an apparatus, he mentions, refurbishing potentially in the future. That is an option. But that comes with high risks. District 7 refurbished some of their apparatus, and it was a very, very bad experience with the refurbishment of those apparatus. And
The cost or?
well, the cost is about half of what a new apparatus would cost, right? But the workmanship on some of the apparatus that we got back was very poor. Some of the pumps broke down, some of the engines wouldn't go. There was just a lot of problems. Now, is that work still under warranty from the refurbished factory? Potentially it is, but what happens once those warranties run out? Then you're setting with potentially, what do you call a lemon? Right? You buy a new car and you have a lemon because of all these problems and they can't figure it out. And then it ends up having to be repaired. And again, that cost of repair would not come from insurance because it's not a damage to the vehicle, right? It's not something that insurance would cover. It's something that would have to come out of our revenue. So can you have those problems with the new apparatus? Of course, you can have those problems with the new apparatus, but new apparatus are under warranty longer than potentially a refurbishment is. So there's been bad stories about refurbishments. Now ambulances get refurbed. We could do that. That usually costs around 150,000. Roughly, that's a rough estimate, depending on what type of things you want done. Everything costs in refurbishment. Every bolt, every light bulb, every change costs something in a refurbishment. And usually refurbishment involves a new chassis under the ambulance box. The box is taken off. The box is scraped, it's repainted. That's one of the options. You don't have to even get it repainted if you don't want to. But then replacing, upgrading lights, replacing electrical, heating, cooling, all of those things come into refurbishment. So again, 150 grand is probably a rough standard of what a refurbishment could potentially cost. And that is half to 2/3 of what a new ambulance on the lower end would cost.
Future financing is an option, Chief, down the road. Also, District 7 has done that through PNC financing for apparatus.
Sure.
If
Again,
the district chose a levy lid lift, and once those funds it started accumulating, that would help. We'd have an initial down payment.
absolutely. So we could take out private loans, but what the public needs to understand is that has to come out of our revenue.
Yes.
That is not paid for by a separate measure. Sorry about the phone. Sorry. Regarding the phone. Thanks, Commissioner. I like to see people scramble for their phones and stuff during meetings when this happens, so. But what everybody needs to understand, any loans, right now, we are a zero debt organization. So we own everything. We don't lease anything. We own everything. There's some agencies that lease things, right? Out there. We own everything. So we have zero debt in this agency at this point. And I don't want to necessarily see this agency go into debt. And then the risk of doing private financing at a cost of let's say, I believe there was a capital group that I spoke to, and there's state private loans that we could get as well, state financing. But again, you're looking at tens of thousands of dollars every single year that has to be paid out for those loans that gets taken off at the top of our revenue from the very beginning. And the more we stretch new revenue coming in and don't put that money into reserve capacity as much as feasibly possible, outside of the necessities of operational expenses that we cannot afford at this point for our internal customers, hence our volunteers, both in outfitting and equipment and apparatus and those things, then we start getting pinched again financially. And then if we have a loan payment and we have to put $100,000 towards a loan payment, right? And they talked about a non-voted bond, right? In the presentation, there was a non-voted bond, and we can go up to 3.5 million with a non-voted bond, but that's not paid back in addition by the taxpayer. That is directly paid out of our revenues. So if we don't have a levy to support that payment on a yearly basis, then that's a no-go. And then what if something happens? We are tied into that payment for at least 10 years.
That's worse than one.
Well, a bond is in addition to, right? And it's paid back by the taxpayers. And it's additional, right? A bond is additional. So, yeah, those are great things, but we don't have $1 million in our revenue budget. You know, to make that easy decision going, oh yeah, $100,000 a year is an easy payment because of our revenue. Well, right now we couldn't do anything like that with our revenue.
Norm, did you want to bring up something?
Sorry. Are you speaking to me?
Yes.
Asking if you have any questions or would like to have any input into this.
I don't have any questions at this time. I'd like to hear a little more about, well, you said the levy seems to be a direction to go into, but would you think if we did levy and bond, that could destroy one or the other?
Yes, I do. That's a huge risk to take. That if we pass a lower cent levy, that levy and a bond fails, and the bond fails, that levy will not support our capital facility improvements over the years to come. If a 20 or 30 cent levy was chosen, that's not going to overcome our capital facility needs. A 40 cent levy, 50 cent levy would be where we would potentially need to go to overcome the potential necessity of needing a bond issue in the future to even have a shot at that, to overcome anything when we're looking at 4.2 million. So if you look at the spreadsheet that I still have up, you know, if we go for a 40 cent levy, that brings in 374,000. And again, these are approximate numbers, so please don't
Right.
hold these. Okay, that brings in an additional $374,000 into our facilities, or our revenue, I should say. 75 to 100,000 of that's going to have to go into the operational fund for daily operations, to start looking at those part-time people, to outfit our volunteer personnel correctly and appropriately for what they provide to this community. So we already take 100,000 off of that. We're able to put 274,000 away into reserve capacity. It would take us 2.5 years to save enough money to purchase potentially a new engine. Just one. It would take us 1.5 years to save up enough money to do the parking lot, because first estimates, and that's from satellite view and stuff, but we have drainage running through the parking lot. We have electrical running through the parking lot. So once we get into all of that, they find additional problems. You know, the estimate that I got just off of satellite view was 300,000+ to redo our parking lot. And that's going up day by day. You know, to save up for 2 engines, $274,000 a year. Let's say my engines cost, let's say $500,000 versus $650 with the cost of inflation. That's $1 million. So you can do the math. It's going to take 4 years, 250 a year right? So approximately, 4 years to save up for 2 fire trucks. And that's if that's all we save for. Right? That's if that's all we save for. Now you add 2 personnel at $30,000, and $30,000 may be low, but you add 2 personnel, part-time personnel to cover the district at $30,000 a piece. That's another $60,000 off of that revenue. So now you only have $210,000 that you can put into reserve capacity. So now that lengthens out our ability to save and to overcome capital facility needs. That's if nothing else breaks in the station.
Could you, or could we look at, if we had a levy and we had so much we could spend in that year, and the parking lot was a lot more expensive than we planned on, could we borrow some from our reserve and then pay that back?
Well, of course,
It's like pay that back.
yeah, I think to make this all work, we would have to borrow a portion of the 1.1 million reserve that we currently have. But we also have to maintain our fiscal responsibility to having enough reserve to overcome any type of disaster that this agency would have to deal with financially or economically. I mean, we have to, they say it's prudent to have 6 months of reserve, right? I think that's for my home, right? They want us to have 6 months reserve as a financial planner for me, for my personal life. But how much money, and I think maybe Brian can help guide us on this. Maybe our insurance carrier could help us guide us on this as well. ESIP could help guide us on this. But what is a not under, but not Cadillac, Ferrari, Lamborghini, level of reserve funds to make sure that we are safe, because that's our number one duty, is to be safe and to overcome for the continuation of emergency services. So my voice means little because it's up to the commissioners, but I would have to say that I would never is a pretty strong word, support, using all of our reserves towards our capital facilities. I think that would be disastrous for this organization as a responsibility to have fiscal responsibility financially. So taking our reserves down to 400,000. Patty, on a monthly basis, what's the average that we put out? Do you know?
Let me see here. I don't have the average, but using this month, May, between our warrants and payroll, it's a total of $50,481. So anywhere between 35 to 50 per month, depending on payables and
Okay.
payroll costs.
So let's just say 40, just an example. So 6 months would be
Okay.
$240,000. 7 months, 280, 8 months, 320. My math is serving me correctly. Right. So if we're doing $40,000 a month on average for expenditures out of this district, 10 months would be 400,000. So 10 months of reserve capacity. That would relieve us of $600,000 that could go towards capital facilities. So there was another question in here about bond and what that would cost the average person. I believe in Jim Nelson's presentation, it's currently online. So the video is online, and I have not rewatched that video. So the numbers are very fuzzy for me when it comes to what he was expressing to be a bond issue for $3.5 or $4 million. I want to say it was around $200. And I don't know if that was per year. I believe that was per year, $200 per year per household to pay back a $3.5 or $4 million. Now I could be way off, so please, Pat, don't hold me to that. If you rewatch that video, Jim also sent me some material that I can forward to you as well to give you those examples. So I'm happy to do that. But then again, you're looking at a $3.5, $4 million bond that our current levy doesn't support. That's the real big understanding that we all need to have, is that your levy has to be able to support the bond improvements. Now the bond is paid for, right? But the improvements that that bond puts into place, our levy has to overcome any problems with those improvements. Of course, some of that's going to be warranted, but let's say the parking lot's warranted for 6 months. Right? And then we start having some major issues after 6 months. That's not part of workmanship or anything else. Our reserves, our revenue is going to have to pay for that. Apparatus warranties. I honestly can't tell you how long an apparatus warranty is for. You know, there's different on the powertrain and on the body. Those are different types of warranties. So I don't want to speculate on those because I think I'd be way off. But what happens when it doesn't fall underneath warranty? Because not everything follows underneath warranty. The other thing is if we crash one of our apparatus, do we want to go through our insurance and have them pay for it? And then our cost of insurance goes up the next year, or do we want to pay for that fix out of our reserves or out of our revenue? Those are all decisions that have to be made when those things come up. So I would like to try to get through everything, you know, with the levy, but the levy is going to have to be a heavy levy. And again, it's never a good time to ask for money. Although it has to be done, we need to have the conversations and bring it forth and objectively approach, you know, the situation that we find ourselves in the coming years. So my hopes would never have to be able to, you know, would not have to take out a bond issue in the future. But as I talked about, all those little things start adding up. Personnel, cost of doing business. I mean, all these little things start adding up and start taking off the top of what we are planning on putting away into reserve capacity to start overcoming some of our capital facility needs. And the more little things that get added and the things that are not even thought of at this point, not even in our imaginations yet, those things will come into play as well, because some things will come up in the future. Yeah, too. So you can see how fast $374,000 goes. It goes away pretty quick when we're already behind the 8 ball on this stuff.
And that's being conservative.
And that's being conservative. Again, could we spend the next 5, 7, 10 years with a higher levy to try to overcome our capital facility needs and do our savings and do the best we can and stretch those out? You know, my truck will be 35, 36, 37 years old, you know, by the time we're ready to potentially purchase one. But again, we can use, you know, 600,000, 500,000 of our reserve capacity that we currently have. That could cover the cost of the parking lots per se, and go towards a new ambulance or a new fire truck. Again, I have grants out for a new ambulance and I have a grant out for radios, and both of those are in my capital facility plans. Both are over $300,000 in grants. And so combined, there's 700 plus, around 700,000 plus or minus. And if I get both of those this year, then $700,000 comes off of our capital facility plan. And The problem is grants are hope. And at some point, we're gonna have to overcome if we are unable to get grants. And I'm happy to write grants. I'm happy to have other agencies write grants. But again, grants are grants. And even with a grant, we have to pay a portion of that grant, right? The federal government doesn't cover it all. I think our size of agency. Patty, do you know what is it 5% or 10%? I'm sorry, I forget. I have so many numbers going through my head right now. It's a 5% cost back to this agency, I believe, or 10% of the federal amount. So they cut that off, but we still have to provide that and spend it. So let's say I get a $300,000 grant. They take off the 10%, so $30,000. They give us a check for $270,000. We have to make up out of our reserve capacity that other 30,000, and we have to minimally spend the 300,000, but we had to make up 30,000 of it. So they don't give us $300,000. They give us $300,000 minus what our federal share is. So, the financing option that's a danger zone, because then we are in debt at that point, and that money has to be paid out every year. And if we come into an emergency situation and we have a $50,000, $100,000 payment because we took out $1 million or $2 million loan, and we are unable to satisfy that, then we default. And that becomes even a bigger issue for this agency and community as well. So we have to make sure, yeah, go out, get private financing, but how are we going to pay it back? And how are we going to do everything else that needs to be done so we can sustain a good level of emergency services here? And that's the question to be asked. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner Norman.
No, I could see, one of the questions I had, as far as a levy goes, we're looking at 50.5. If you raise that, or can we raise that at this particular point?
So levy can go up to $1.50 per thousand. And as you can see, a 40-cent levy would bring us up to $1.09. Okay, on the chart I'm showing to you right now at the bottom of it.
Right.
So, and a 45-cent levy would bring us up to $1.14. A 50-cent levy would bring us up to $1.19. So we have movement beyond that.
Okay. That was my question.
Yeah.
Any questions from the rest of you?
Well, the other questions that are coming across, yeah, bonds are great. Bonds are great, but again, you have an immediate visual return on the money for the community because we purchase new things, we build new things, we spend the money. You have to have a levy that supports those improvements. And right now, we had $11,000, if I remember correct, Patty, last year to go into reserve capacity. I can't put new tires on both my large fire trucks for $11,000.
Yeah.
And the problem with a bond, and a bond's great. A levy's great, but a levy is sustainable. It's there. It's our revenue base. A bond is not. A bond is paying for certain things and then it's done. And the taxpayers pay out over 20 years. I would like to see, as one of the comments made, I would like to see potentially the bond interest rate come down, hopefully over the next 5, 7, 10 years, to see if it comes down to a more manageable rate. But no one knows what's going to happen in 5, 7, 10 years. So if it wouldn't come down, then our levy would need to try to overcome the need for a bond. And again, we can extend out some of the capital facility improvements. There's ones that we cannot, there's others that we can. But everything continues to jump in cost as we move forwards. So an apparatus now is going to be potentially 15%, or it'll probably be more than that, more expensive in 3 years. So it is, and it's doing business, and I completely understand that. I have to come from a point or from a stance that the district has to be revenue sustained. The district has to be revenue sustained for daily operations, outside of any thought process for capital facilities improvements. We have to be able to conduct daily operations. If we start not being able to pay our bills or purchasing equipment, replacing equipment, those types of things, that's going to be a hard day for this community.
We don't have any other resources.
So our mutual aid is 45 minutes out. And that's if they're coming from the closest locations.
Yeah,
So we are by ourselves. We're not like any other place in the county that has mutual aid within 15 minutes, right? 20 minutes. We are alone. We can get support from Delta Fire Rescue, but that also has costs associated with it. If I pull their ladder truck, that's going to be, well, a couple years ago when we had the storage facility catch on fire, that truck was dispatched. And then they didn't even make it on scene. That truck was dispatched and canceled. And we still had to pay $4,000 of that. Because once they pull that trigger for Delta, overtime is paid in their contract for their personnel. Now, Nielsen's paid that cost, but not everybody's going to be able to cover that cost on a residential fire, on anything else, you know, and would they? Because Nielsen's wrote a check for that to Delta. I don't believe their insurance company balked at it, right? Of paying fire department costs to respond. So, but if that comes back to the district, then that, I mean, again, that's $4,000 or $5,000. And if we utilize that 4 times, 5 times a year, that's, you know, and our option to pull their ladder truck is the last option. And that will be in a critical event when we need elevated master streams. But otherwise we would pull a ladder from North Whatcom. But again, that's going to be 45, 50 minutes away.
I'd like to look at some more numbers.
What would you like to see?
I'd like to see what we would be doing if we went for a higher levy and put those numbers together.
So you want a 55 and a 60-cent levy?
Yeah,
Okay, I will run those numbers and I'll get that to you.
and maybe more. I'm not sure. I want to see what we get from this.
Sure, I'll run a 55 and a 60-cent levy. I can leave in the 20, 30-cent levies if you want me to. Otherwise, I can remove those if those are something that you don't believe will be anywhere near what we need if a levy is chosen. But it might be something that the public can utilize for visual perspective.
Okay.
So
I wonder if we could, be a little more specific in the numbers that the property values that you have.
you want to go down below 500,000?
No, but I wonder if we can kind of look at the numbers in that, like the number of people who fall into the 500,000 percentage wise. And I don't know if that's even possible.
I don't,
But
I can ask a realtor. Maybe a realtor may have a percentage of the homes that we have available or the areas, right? And may be able to give me a number of percentages that's, 30% of the homes here are $300,000 and less, 20% are 300 to 500,000. So I'll talk to a realtor and see if they could help me come up with an approximation
It might
on.
be helpful just for the public to understand the numbers.
Sure, I will add that to my list. Get that. So I'm gonna add 55 and 60 as projections as well. And then I'll ask a realtor on cost of homes and see if they can come up with, and help me come up with some type of percentage of the ranges of homes here. Will that satisfy, Commissioner Norman, will that satisfy your request?
Yeah, for now, yeah.
Okay. Okay. I will go and I will have that ready to, our next meeting will be on the 6th of June, and then the 12th of June, and then our regular meeting on the 14th of June. So 6th, 12th, and 14th
Got it.
of June. Is there anything else that I can answer or acquire? Yeah, I'll check into the county assessor as well. Thank you for that.
Chris, I'm fire chief. I'm just wondering, I'll have a few more questions on bonds, but I'll take that at another time.
Okay, I'm happy to meet with you as well.
Okay.
But it comes down to, again, if we can take a bond, but I can tell you that our current levy is not going to support any issues outside of warranty and stuff like that of the bond improvements.
It's just for information.
So, yeah, and again, I of course, why wouldn't I like a bond? Because it allows me to buy things very, very quickly. We get the money immediately, and to start doing the improvements for my volunteers, right? And giving them better equipment and stuff that they can do their jobs at higher levels. So yeah, I mean, the bond is great if you have the capacity to be able to support it. And right now, with our current levy, we do not.
If we would be guaranteed that both would pass, that would be nice.
And
There's no way.
again, that's been suggested, and the commissioners can choose to do that. We can put a bond and a levy on the ballot and go for both. But if the levy passes and it's a low levy, it's not going to support our capital facility improvements, and another bond issue will have to be taken up in the coming years, probably sooner than later. If we get the bonds and not the levy, then we don't have the money to support the bond improvements. And we don't have the money in a levy to support the necessity that we're going to have to find new personnel to replace the heavy responders that we have currently that are aging in the community now. And I see that coming probably in the next 3 to 5 years at this point, if not sooner. I mean, we've had some deaths in the community that have been very unexpected recently, and any of us could be lost. I could be lost tonight, tomorrow. I mean, any of us, we don't know when our time is, right? But we need to be sustained financially in order to be able to ride through and overcome those difficulties at any given time. And we've been blessed over the last 13 years to be able to do that with our current levy that was approved in 2010. But now comes the time that the reason why we're having these discussions is because we're coming to an impasse.
I think it, on the other thing we were talking about, the contractors, what the price per square foot in construction is. Now is it going up in the last 5 years? Year type thing.
Okay.
Because as price goes up, per square foot, the home smaller, but nonetheless, it's kind of to show an indication of where we're going. I
Mhm.
don't think there's a lot of homes being sold way over what they're worth, and speculation stuff. You never know. I mean, it's such a very.
Yeah, I agree. Mhm. Yeah, so I think a combination of getting some numbers from the county realtor here. County may be able to give us, the average cost of a home in Point Roberts, and we can utilize that number. But I'd like to be a little bit more specific on how many ranges do we have from 500 to 1 million, 500, 750,000, 300 to 500,000. I mean, what are percentage of homes within those ranges to present to the public as well for information. I think that is all good. Right.
But you're also talking about, if you got a bond and you get all this stuff done quickly, I
Yeah.
wouldn't count on that.
Well, no, I mean, we have 3 years to spend it. I mean, I'm not going to be able to get my parking lot replaced in a week.
Yeah.
Right. But the parking lot not only serves us, it serves, the clinic as well. And, some things that I've started looking at as things that we could take potentially off the table for people would be, not charging for ambulance transports to the hospital. And there's people that have to pay copays on that potentially. But right now we take people to collections if they don't pay the outstanding debt from an ambulance transport, as other agencies do in the county as well, North Whatcom, District 7, where I work as well as a firefighter paramedic. We take people to collections. So if, let's say, the bill is $1,500 and insurance pays $1,000, we will take people to collections and expect to regain that $500 for the cost of the fuel and the maintenance on the rig and everything else. That's business. We could do away, hopefully, depending on the level of levy, do away with ambulance transport fees altogether. Or we say that, okay, if the person has insurance, we would bill the insurance and call it good. Whatever the insurance would reimburse, we wouldn't take them for the additional cost of that transport to collections. Implementing a pickup from the hospital. If this district decides to, or transports someone to the hospital, gives them to airlift transports from this community. We rendezvous and have another agency transport from this community, and they end up at the hospital. They don't walk out AMA, which is against medical advice, but they go through the doctor's care. They get released from the hospital. That we would have a program in place to go down and pick them up from the hospital. And that is something that I think would be really large for this community, but it would take additional funds to put that in place. And a vehicle, obviously, that would be able to handle people of all different ages and disabilities.
Increase in insurance.
Potentially an increase in insurance, but I can tell you that our agency per capita probably does more refusals from people that we see that end up making a decision not to go to the hospital because they don't have a way back home, or it's a difficult way to get back home. Now, obviously, the felons that we have and people that have criminal records that aren't admissible into Canada, we still wouldn't be able to give them a ride home because it's a non-emergent situation. They wouldn't be able to partake in that program just because we're not taking them to a doctor, we're bringing them back home. But I've stated before that those individuals are very resourceful and they always come back to Point Roberts, whether by boat or by plane. They always come back here, but that program wouldn't be able to support them. The other thing would be to get rid of burn permit fees, but to still have a permit required. and to go to a yearly permit on both recreational. Recreational is already a year permit, but to go to a year permit on residential fires, it's most likely we would still charge $50 a day for the land clearing because that is resource heavy. That's a discussion point to have though as well. I don't know if that's required. I don't think it is. It's jurisdictional, the authority having jurisdiction. So those are three things that would be being looked at to discontinue or to relieve cost of to the taxpayer too, if a levy was able to be passed or a bond and or a combination of the two on the November ballot. I think those three items are, especially the pickup from the hospital. Yeah, it's countless numbers of people that have chosen when we've said you need to go to the hospital. They've chosen not to because of the difficulty of a ride, finding a ride. We could support Circle of Care. I know Circle of Care does the best they can, but right now, those individuals are utilizing their own cars where their own cars are barely running and they're spending their money on the gas and everything else. And this would be individuals that could get positions within the agency that would be brought on, that would be paid a stipend to get up at 2 a.m. to go down to the ER to pick somebody up and bring them back home to Point Roberts. I think that would be a huge, huge service. But again, it takes funds to do that. And so those things stated, I mean, there's some people that buy a lot of burn permits and, upwards of $100 plus in burn permits a year. And it could save them that funds, right? with a levy. And then not having to pay an additional $500 or $250 or even more on an ambulance bill and being taken collections and everything else. Now, some people may consider that harsh, but that's business. And we write off some bills every year as well for ambulance transports, but we usually follow the lead of St. Joseph's Hospital because they dive into the person's financial records. They request bank records and everything else to see how much they're bringing in. And if they sign off on a release of funds to that person that they don't have to pay the cost of St. Joseph's Care, then we usually follow that footprint. And I will also sign off on getting rid of their bill with this district for ambulance transport. I'd say a half a dozen times a year on average here. We only transport maybe 30, 40 people a year. Do I see that going up? Yeah, I do, just because of the aging of our community. But I think it would go up immediately if we had a way to get them back to Point Roberts. And I think we would see a jump in available transports for this agency. So those are ideas, and bringing that up to the commissioners and to the public. I spoke at PRCAC PrAC the other night, and I believe Bill was there. Bill Zidell was there, and Virginia, you were there, Commissioner Lester, and spoke to PRCAC on some topics and overviewed some things as well. And there was some other people participating in that meeting. So this is where we're at. Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
Nope.
Bill, you ever want to say anything?
Commissioner Lester is asking you, Bill, if you want to say anything because you never do. So
I've been told to be a good listener, but no, I was glad you showed up at the meeting because I intentionally asked one of the questions, and I wanted you to go through exactly what you did to make people understand about the bond and about the difference. So I appreciate that, and yeah, that was whatever support you need. Because, nothing is free. People have to understand that. And when that bell rings and you guys answer the call, you got to be prepared, and you got to have men and women that have the right equipment, right time, and they're not at risk. So I'm one of the first people to stand up and say, what kind of support do the uniformed services need and what kind of support do our firefighters need? And a lot of stuff then falls in behind that. Okay, Chief?
Thank you.
Appreciate that, Bill.
Anything else?
Yes.
Linda, Patty, do you have anything?
I don't have anything else, Chief. Thank you.
Well, that being the case, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So we end the session
So just to sum up real quick before that time stamp is given, I'm gonna get a hold of some realtors, be contacting the county as well to try to get some type of understanding of the cost of average home cost here, and then maybe a percentage of some ranges of homes here in this community. The dollar amount of new construction per foot or per square foot here, I can contact some builders. And then I'm going to be revising the levy numbers to add 55 cents and 60 cents to the projections on that. And anything else I should be working on before our next meeting on June 6th.
One of the suggestions, again, in the chat, Chief, was that when you're looking for those values of homes under 500,000, you could ask realtors, but you might also present that question to the county assessor's office.
Yeah, I'll be calling the county. So, thank you.
You said the next meeting is the 6th?
June 6th, June 12th, June 6th, and June 12th. No 8th.
No,
June 6th, June 12th, June 14th will be our main meeting. Or regular meeting, I should say. The June 6th and the June 12th meeting are special meetings like today.
Last chance. I would move that we adjourn the meeting at 5:23.
Adjournments at 5:23 by Commissioner Lester,